help vent it out. Because the vent pipes in most systems are under negative pressure, which means the pipe pressure in the pipe is lower than the pressure in the room. Mainly because of stack effect, right? You got something kind of warm going up this tube all the way outside, so it wants to go right out, right? So with that negative pressure existing in the pipe, the pressure in the room wants to go into that pipe. So that's what a damper and a diverter do, is they allow that to happen. So when the unit goes on and the temperature goes up, the air in the room's like, hey, what's going on? And it goes over to that pipe too, and it helps really push out the gases.
Now, what happens if that damper is malfunctioning?
Exactly. So if the damper is malfunctioning, that doesn't happen. And then it can risk backdrafting. Okay.
Do you walk into a lot of homes with backdraft problem?
You know, not as many as you think you would, but they do exist. A lot of them are right on the line, you know, or certain situations cause them to fail. And that's what you have to have happen. That's what you have to do is when you test this and you find that a certain combination of effects creates this worst case and it fails, you gotta tell the homeowner, listen, you cannot run all the fans and the system at the same time. And you have them sign some little copy and you sign a copy and you both have it, so you're not 7 times now and manslaughter of killing somebody, right? You've got cover yourself, right? Or you fix it, you know, or you say, we gotta install a door on the boiler room. You know, we gotta isolate this space. You took the door off. Why'd you do that? You know, or people are like, I put a louvered door on it. I finished my basement. You're like, where's the boiler? And it's like right there, like 3 feet from the couch where everyone's sitting, you know, like.
See, when I grew up, we had a louvered door for the washer, the clothes washer, and the dryer, and the boiler, and the hot water heater were all in the same small room.
Yeah, I mean, it's really common. I mean, we did, like, remember Sano's party, we sat 5 feet from the boiler.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew this stuff. Could all have been dead down there.
My boiler,
Probably ruining this whole thing.
I have a living room space
Mhm.
that's probably from here to where you are, where the boiler is.
I mean, if you're worried about it, just go down there, turn the system on, you smoke, take a cigarette, and just blow some smoke around there and make sure that it vents out of the house.
If it's not doing that, then
If you put smoke around it and it just sits there or starts coming back at you, it's backdrafting.
So you said,
backdraft.
Yeah, it has 1 minute.
if
to
it
pass
just
that test.
sits there,
Right, you have
it
one.
doesn't have to necessarily. Oh wow.
You have 1 minute to pass that test. Right, so right when you cold start it, it's gonna probably just sit there. But after a minute, if it doesn't, the
suck out.
smoke start to get drawn up from where you're putting at the diverter, because most of them have a diverter.
I have a gap. I have a gap in the boiler door. So what you're saying is that
You
I
can
turn on
test
the
it there
boiler.
if you wanted to. You could turn the boiler on instead of the door and just see if the air is drawn into the room.
Okay.
And if you see it coming back, then you know you got a problem.
What I could do, I can have that little smoke stick thing.
you could use
Yeah,
that.
I could just, okay, I turn the boiler on, it's running, I'll stand a foot away from the door, just go like this a little bit, and see if it sucks it in.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah,
goes
test
in,
the system. Go right up to the boiler where the pipe is. There's usually a diverter right there.
Yeah.
Just go around it and see if this.
When
Alright.
you say
do that
diverter,
tonight.
you say where the pipe is going out of the boiler?
Mhm.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, usually there's like a diverter on it. You know, it looks like that.
That metal domey looking thing?
Yeah,
Yep, the air is mixed there, or there's a damper, little thing swings over.
Yeah, we had one
yeah,
of
because
those.
you can hear it, you can hear and then it opens.
Yeah, that's an internal damper. It's
We didn't have that, we had
Mine
just that
is
swinging.
broken.
Yeah, the swingy thing is usually on like oil systems.
That's we had an oil system.
Oh yeah, with the little weight inside.
Yes.
Furnaces,
Yeah. I've
gas
seen those.
systems don't have that furnace.
Oh.
Have that type of wheelie damper. Usually gas systems have a diverter, and oil has the
The weighted damper,
Yeah.
because that's how it sucks its air in to dump it out. So it mixes, that's the air leaving the house, so it takes a little bit of the inside air. It's why
And that's why when these systems actually depressurize the house a little bit more. So when we do this worst case depressurization test in the house, we're gonna do these systems first, and then you say, okay, it's good to go, I did this test, now let's turn on the systems. You turn on the hot water heater, you turn on the furnace or boiler, and then you go back and look at your manometer and see if you dropped any more. Because sometimes you'll pass the depressurization test, you know, before you turn on the hot water heater and the boiler, but then when you turn those units on, they suck out more out of the house and you end up failing. So then you're like, oh, now I failed the depressurization test when everything is on.
Alright,
Wow, okay.
We're gonna do all this step by step, don't worry.
No, I'm just trying, it's helpful to remember this stuff, cause I remember we had an oil heater, the oil boiler. We made hot water, we didn't have the hot forced air, so it wasn't a furnace.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know what I had when I was a kid. Now I don't have no system, I live in a house, in a building, so I don't deal with that stuff now.
All right, competing for indoor air. What happens when an appliance is starved of sufficient combustion air or dilution air due to negative pressure in the CAS? You have incomplete combustion, which can lead to increased CO. You have flame rollout, which is what this is showing. If you go into someone's basement and you see like these discoloration, it looks like it's been burned, that's usually because the flames have been rolling out because there's not enough air for the unit to, do combustion.
Searching for air.
Or backdrafts. Evidence of backdrafting, a visual thing that you can look for, is that same kind of staining, but backdrafting usually occurs where the vent pipe is. So you might look on like, say this is a hot water heater, and then there's a little vent here, and then there's usually this like little hood thing right there, right above the hole, and that's where it kind of is vented out. So you have this little gap kind of up there. If you notice that there are little balls of soot
Yeah.
in a circle, or if you notice white crystals or watermarks, that means that the unit's been backdrafted. Might pass when you were there that day, but there's no other way for that stuff to get there. Okay?
I could have died. So these are, what you're showing us is a lot of, it's more like safety stuff, like the CAS.
Yeah, this level of an
This is
audit is
safety.
more about health and safety. That's why if they ask you on the exam, like, what is the number one concern of an energy auditor? It's not reducing your bills, it's to make sure everything is it's a health and safety. All the answers come from health and safety. That's really.
That's what I'm figuring out, that most of this, like, everything that has to do with the CAS zone is all safety.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna do an efficiency test, but it's all about, is it drafting properly? Did it pass the depressurization test? Does it pass its draft test? Did it pass its spillage test? Did it pass its carbon monoxide test? By the way, what's the efficiency? Yes, exactly. Perform a CAS test. This is a simple test that measures air pressure in the CAS zone using the manometer. I'm not gonna go over all of it today, you're gonna do it tomorrow, but we're gonna talk a little bit. It's a step-by-step test that we do, where we turn on the exhaust appliances in the building to find out which ones have negative effect on the CAS zone. Close interior doors to see if they have an impact on the CAS pressure, which we just talked about. This is our depressurization test. And determine which combination of exhaust fans and closed doors give you the worst CAS reading. That's known as our worst case number, okay? And you're gonna go over that tomorrow. We use the manometer to do this test. For this test, you need a manometer, which tells you the pressure difference between the CAS and the outdoor. You need to run a hose to the reference port and run it outside the building. So you just like throw it out a basement window. It's a good idea to have a couple of 30-foot hoses, because sometimes you gotta run it up the stairs and out the door and, To set it up, close the exterior doors and windows, turn off all the exhaust appliances, measure your baseline pressure, and run that, measure your baseline CAS, run your hose outside, and that measures your baseline CAS. If you can't stand in the CAS with the manometer during the test, run an import hose into it. Okay, so what they're saying is, say your hose isn't long enough to reach it to the CAS zone and to the outside, well then run a hose to the outside and run a hose to the CAS zone, and it's just like being in the CAS zone. Get it? Because the hose is in it. So if you don't have enough to do it, which is not, if you've got two hoses, you can take
A piece of tape or something.
yeah, you can take, I don't know, you take these metal probes they give you. You just put the hose on each end and longer.
Make it longer. Oh, okay.
Connector, and then put the manometer in the CAS zone. With no mechanical devices on, that measures the base pressure, which we've already talked about. You record it, so here they go. You got your baseline -2, turn the dryer on, drops to -4. Turn on the kitchen exhaust, goes to -6. Bathroom exhaust does have no change. Air handler, no change. Bathroom door closed, no change. CAS door closed, drops to -8. Net pressure, subtract, -6 pascals. So you went from -2 to -8, that gives you a 6 pascal pressure drop. Most systems, that means you're gonna fail if you have a 6 pascal pressure drop in the system. You usually see this happen in tight houses, in houses that are really leaky. For every CFM you throw out, it's easier to replace with a CFM in. Kwame's place is like Swiss cheese. we're gonna turn on all the fans, dryers, everything, and you're not gonna see it do anything. But when we close the doors to all the upstairs areas, you see it drop a little bit. Because now we're basically cutting the house in half. That's the only time that you really see a difference.
I'm confused on the CAS testing procedure.
Oh, I haven't even touched, I'm just saying the CAS test is a test that is a bunch of procedures. I just want you to know that. Tomorrow and the next day, you're gonna go over each step of the CAS test in detail.
Okay.
Like how you do the worst case, how you do the draft, how you do the CO, how you do the spillage, how to interpret the results. You're gonna go through everything step by step.
Can we touch on the baseline real quick?
Yeah, the baseline is just throwing the manometer hose outside. You just take a manometer, plug the hose into the reference port, throw it outside, and put the manometer in the CAS zone, and you just read it.
In the CAS zone, meaning in the boiler room or in the basement, wherever those
Wherever
items are
you've
located.
designated is that isolated space. So when I go into a basement, say I go into the basement, here's my little combustion appliance zone. I see the boilers in here. And
The hot water heater.
Yep, I see that, and there's a door, but it's a really crappy door. It's got holes and stuff in it. I say, does that room hold water?
No.
No. So now the CAS zone, I step back and I look at the basement. There's no door between the basement and the house. So I think to myself,
The whole building is a CAS zone.
exactly. So then it becomes the whole building is a
So if your door in like in my home where I grew up, had the hot water heater, the boiler, and the dryer all in the same room with the louvered door, that meant the whole house was basically.
Yeah, if there was no door at the basement, because if there were a door here that I
No.
could close, then I would say, okay, the basement is the CAS zone. I say that 80% of the houses you go in, the basement's gonna be the CAS zone, because this isn't isolated, but there is at least a door there.
No, we
But the truth is,
Yeah.
you never really know until you do your pressure differential test with the blower door and establish that this is at 50 pascals, right? Because if it's not, if it said with the door closed that the basement was at 10 pascals, well, that means it's inside.
well, Split Ranch, it was upstairs, downstairs, so it's open to both.
Right. Most homes, because of leakiness and the connection between the basement and the first floor, even if there are doors, the whole house is the CAS zone.
Right, okay.
So in most homes, when you're doing this test, you run it outside and you just have this thing in the basement. You're right, it's
So
right
you're
next
close
to
to
the
it.
boiler room. Kind of just walking around.
Yes. So if you have that the manometer is sitting there outside the door of the boiler room, the hot water heater, and your dryer, your laundry room, whatever you want to call it, you have your reference point out the window in the backyard, and you're taking your reference now. To take your reference, you have to turn everything on, right? Or is it
Everything off.
off? Well, shouldn't it be 0?
No, because this thing reads pressure difference.
Oh, so compared to the outside to the inside, it's going to give me a number. And but the number, and do you have that door fan on or off?
No blower door going.
No blower door.
No, so we're not going to -50. No, this is, no. This is just the natural pressure.
That's where I was missing the point. Now,
So it's kind of like the natural pressure difference when you do the baseline before you set up the blower door and you got
It's
that
the same
pressure.
that's why you do your CAS testing first, you're saying?
No, you can do it later, because you're not gonna have the fan running when you do this, right?
But the door would be, all the outside doors would be closed.
Mhm.
You're not, all your exterior penetrations are closed.
Right.
You're just testing what's inside the home, nearest, the closest, your CAS zone.
Mhm.
So that's why when you throw that hose outside and you take the pressure reading difference from the inside, from the outside, that's where but what are the chances of getting a negative? Wouldn't you get a positive if
No,
there's
because
leakage?
stack effect creates that negative pressure in the basement. That's why we have infiltration at the bottom.
Bottom going up.
Exfiltration at the top. Right, so most homes look something like, in the basement, you see something like, say it was the winter, -5. The first floor, you get a number like -2. Second floor, you're probably approaching 0. And on the top floor, you might have a positive number.
Okay.
If you were to take a manometer and throw it out the window.
Every floor that you
Yeah,
went
the
to.
higher up you get, the lower the pressure starts getting towards positive.
I'm getting it, it's slowly sinking in.
And like this, we'll do this in the field, it'll make more sense as you see me like running and turning off and you're looking at the manometer and you're like, oh, I get it, I could do that.
But at Quasi's house, you're saying we're not gonna see a change because it
Not
leaks.
much, no. Nope, we'll see it with the door closures, but I do not believe unless he's done more air sealing, because you never know what's going on at Kwame's place.
I hear you.
No. Compare net pressure to CAS limits. That's what we just looked at, those depressurization CAS limits. Any zone or area of the building that contains a vented combustion appliance, including space heaters, water heaters, gas clothes dryer, is considered combustion appliance zone. This definition may incorporate the main body of the house, which we just talked about, it usually is. The CAS, all CAS should be tested for worst case. Negative pressures within the CAS tests up to -4 pascals may be acceptable if all venting appliances draft simultaneously and meet draft standards. That's a little bit of weatherization in there, right? But the idea behind these tests, what I'm gonna try to get across to you, because I'm not trying to teach home performance or weatherization, we're gonna be testing is, these are the CAS steps that everyone uses, right? You do a depressurization test. Some people disagree. I think you should be able to go to -6, not -5. Okay, whatever, right? But there's a threshold that you can't go below. And that really, to me, is the importance of this class. I don't wanna teach, like, I don't want you to take any of these field tests and be like, A equals B, I am Mitt Romney. No, sorry, I didn't get it. Like, I want you to more be like, you don't want it to go too negative in here because it might backdraft. Right? I want you to understand the process behind it, like why you don't want to get negative. Well, if we turn on these fans, it could backdraft. Not like if it doesn't go to -6, you are fine. No, because every house is different. There are things you're gonna have to be like, something's not right here. I don't want too negative in here. Right? You have to think about these things, like these CAS limits.
So let me step back, because now I'm getting this, I think, and you could put me in the right direction. So if you go back to where we did the CAS testing procedure, where you had the baseline at -2, the dryer on -4, the kitchen exhaust on -6, the bathroom no change, air handler on no change, bathroom door closed, no change, into 8, and then the CAS door closed -8, and you have a -6, you fail at -6.
Following most standards, you're gonna fail with that sort of pressure differential if you have up to the third system that we looked at in our charts. But some systems, if you had a sealed combustion system, -6 is fine.
I'm trying to figure out what's negative pressure of -5 or greater must be corrected. Oh, so if I read it, I wouldn't have asked that question.
No, because this is more like a weatherization standard, right? So weatherization's like, you can only go to -5, that's it. We don't care what the system is. But if you look on these, you can go to -15 if you have a mechanically assisted draft boiler.
Meaning that what we were talking about,
There's a fan in it, blowing it out.
you hear it open up.
Right? So as soon as you get into mechanically assisted systems, they give you a lot more room, right? But standards are different. You could get a job at Con Ed and they could be like, we use the Star Energy program and our depressurization limit is -7. But if you understand the process behind it, what do you care? -5, -7, whatever. I understand what you're saying. Like, I can't go below this number because it might backdraft.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So if we go by the CAS depressurization limits, say Quasi's house has a natural draft boiler or furnace with a vent damper commonly vented with the water heater, so that his boiler and water heater, and it says -5.
Yep.
We do our test and we get +2.
You can't get positive. That would mean the room is filling up with air.
Oh.
That would be difficult.
So it means it's backdrafting.
Yeah, I guess. It means that everything's backdrafting, pressurizing the basement. Yeah, the only time you'd see something like that, the only time you see something pressurized is when you have like an air handler and the ductwork for the return is running through an unconditioned space like an attic and it has a bunch of leaks in it, and as it's sucking, right, the return sucks air, it sucks air from outside and gets it into the return, and then there are leaks like where the return meets the boiler or the furnace, and those leaks pump out into the zone. That would make the zone go positive in pressure, but that's really the only way, because all the other fan systems, like turning on a bathroom fan, how would that blow air out of the house and then get air from outside and bring it back in? Like, it couldn't. Right? If you had a supply-only fan and you turn it on, but we're turning on venting fans, not supply fans. So the only way is through an air handler with return leaks that dumps the air, the excess air that it's getting into the house.
This CAS depression limits, those are standards.
Yes.
So as long as when we go do our CAS testing for anybody's basement and we're with it, say we're an individual natural draft boiler or furnace, and the limit's -5, we turn all the combustible items on that exhaust only, that supply, that don't return, like the hot water heater, the boiler furnace, and the dryer. and we go down to -3. We're above -5, we're not below
Right,
it,
so we
so we're
pass.
safe.
Mhm.
But if we went to -6, there's,
Fail.
we failed because why?
Because the
Sucking
pressure
too much
now
air.
in the CAS zone where the boiler is sitting and the vent pipe is at a low enough state that it risks pulling the gases this way as opposed to that way when the boiler goes on.
So the higher the number, it's, the pressure is going out, the lower the number is depressurized, and then the gases are coming in, right?
If we have too low a pressure, remember, second law of thermodynamics.
higher to low.
Right, so if the pressure in the pipe becomes higher than the pressure in the CAS zone, it's gonna come that way. We want it to go that way, out of the house.
Because you're testing the outside pressure.
Right, there are two tests we're doing. This is just testing the room. You wanna make sure that the environment that the boilers, the CAS systems are in, isn't in this sinking hole of depressurization, right? You wanna make sure it's okay. We're also gonna do calculations for the draft pressure to make sure that the pressure in the pipe is low enough and doesn't go above a certain number, doesn't get too high, because then it risks being higher than the room and pushing it that way.
Backwards.
Right.
So you're just testing to make sure that the pressure in the CAD zone is
It's adequate enough to not cause harm to a person.
Yeah, just,
okay, I understand, okay, I got you there. So when you're at a -Pascal, you're saying that that room is decompressed? So that when it's blowing the stuff out the door, it's,
No, instead of it blowing it out, it's coming back in.
we don't want that. By
Exactly.
going negative, it's coming back in.
Exactly.
So we want that number to be above the limit, which is -5, because if you went to -6, that means there's a chance that it's starting to backdraft into the house instead of going out in that room. So if you're in, say that we're in this room here, we got a huge boiler there, got a huge hot water heater here, and whatever, and a dryer, big dryer. So we set up our manometer here, that's in the, and then we take a reference point and throw it damp out the door out into the street here, and then we have to close this door?
no, you can leave it open to start.
As long, okay, so we have the door open, we turn the boiler on, turn the hot water heater on,
Don't turn the boiling hot water heater, you turn on all the mechanical systems first and make sure that with just mechanical systems, how low you get. That's why it's not there, but that's why I started with, like if you look at the chart, they started with the dryer, the kitchen exhaust, bathroom air handler. They haven't even gotten to the systems.
Right.
We test all the peripheral systems first, turn it on and see
So
where we
exhaust
get.
fans, the bathroom fan.
Yep.
And if you're in, so you're saying if you're in oh, I'm getting it, so you're not just testing the area near the boiler, you got to be, your manometer has to be near the boiler, and then you gotta go take the kitchen exhaust fan above the stove that dumps the smoke out of the, so that you're not depressurizing the area where the boiler's located, because that's gonna hurt you when you put the boiler on, because if you have, the fan is on in the kitchen because you're cooking catfish or whatever, and you're having to heat up the house at the same time, you don't wanna be backdrafting the fumes from your boiler into the home while you're cooking your fish.
Right.
I'm getting there. Now,
All right.